Hey everybody, Pastor Tim here, and we are in our next chapter, which is chapter 4, as we delve into the next teaching from the treasure principle. As you can see, I'm out here for a little walk in the woods. Just thought I'd do things a little bit differently today. So let's see if I can walk, talk, and bring references in from the book. So chapter 4, let's talk about the big idea that this chapter starts with, which is that there will be rewards in eternity. And I want to ask you the question, how does that feel to you? Does it feel good? Does it feel weird to think about rewards in heaven? I think for some people, as it's noted in the book, they're like, hey, I want my reward to be being with Jesus. Alcorn pushes back, not to say that that's not a reward, but that there's also a lot of reward language in the scripture. Now, inevitably, that leads us to a very good question, which is, well, what will the rewards be? What are the rewards like? And I don't know. Do I get a bigger house? Do I get fancier this or that? I'm not totally sure. Hang on as I cut under a tree here. I'm not totally sure. But what I do know is that if the language of rewards is used in scripture, then we need to embrace it. I also know that in heaven, there's no more lying. There's no more falsehood. There's no more deception. And so that would give us the freedom to conclude very naturally that we don't have to worry about rewards in heaven causing strife. I'm not going to look at that reward and go, oh, you got more than me. That's not fair. I'm mad at you. Because truth is going to reign. And I'm going to go, man, if that person has a huge reward, whatever it is, they totally deserved it because they lived in such a way that earned that reward here on earth. So while I don't think it's totally clear in scripture what the rewards will be, there are clearly rewards in heaven according to scripture. The other main point out of this chapter, which is treasure principle number 2, my heart always goes where I put God's money. So 2 things I want to point out from there. Number 1 is it says God's money. And so that goes back to the idea of being stewards. Do we view ourselves as stewards of God's money? Am I taking care of the money he's entrusted to me, or do I view it as my own? And that is hopefully eye-opening and convicting. For me, it tends not to be big purchases, but it could be 1,000 little purchases that add up to go like, that's just a waste of money. And if I'm stewarding God's money, I should handle it better. So be thinking about stewarding God's money. And then also, I think really the key idea that's put forward here is don't think about, well, I'm going to be generous when my heart gets there. His point and Jesus' point is to say, when we start using our money in a God-centered way, our hearts will follow. And I just want to give you the exact language that he uses here real quick. Let me see if I can find it. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Matthew 6:21. And Randy Alcorn notes it's not just a correlation between those two. Jesus goes so far, it seems, to say there's a causation, that put your treasure in a certain place and your heart will follow. And then he gives some examples, right? If I give towards something, I'm going to want to know what's going on. Like I just think about Mercy Church. We give toward, for example, Live to Serve. And we also give toward Child Voice. Those are 2 international mission groups that we support. I want to know what's happening with Live to Serve. I want to know what's happening with Child Voice. Why? It's not all my money, but it's our money. And as the pastor, I'm like, I want to know what's happening there. I want to be excited about what's happening. I'm thrilled that the team from Live to Serve has come multiple times to Mercy Church to share. I'm thrilled that Nathan has given us updates. I'm thrilled that Nathan has given us opportunities to serve with Child Voice locally. So yeah, it makes sense. If I put my money in that thing, I'm going to be interested in that thing. My heart's going to be drawn toward that thing. So let me just encourage and challenge you. If you're like, you know what, I want to give more, but I just don't feel inspired about it or inspired to do it, give. Don't look for inspiration. Give, and then see if God doesn't start to shape and mold your heart in the direction of that thing. That is how he's made us as humans. So give radically, give generously, give towards something and see how God draws you to love and desire that thing more. Obviously, give towards godly, Christ-centered causes. That's what we're ultimately saying here. But I just love this idea that my heart always goes where I put God's money. And I circled the last, it's hard to switch the pages here with just one hand, but I circled the last line here, where he says, he who spends his life moving away from his treasures has reason to despair. He who spends his life moving toward his treasures has reason to rejoice. And the last line is, are you despairing or rejoicing? Are you looking forward to where you are sending your treasure, right? The treasure principle number one, you can't keep it, but you can send it ahead. Are you looking forward to heaven? I mean, it makes sense that we've studied heaven. Now we're talking about this topic of money. Those two things are very linked according to Scripture. So let me just encourage and challenge you to think about taking a step in giving towards something. It could be more towards a current organization. It could be more towards a current, Christian ministry. But maybe it's something totally new. And you're like, I'm going to start giving to this missions organization or this ministry. Maybe it's $5 a month. Maybe it's $10 a month. Maybe you're in a place where it's like $2 a month feels like a lot. Whatever it is, I just want to encourage you, give toward that ministry and see if God doesn't start kind of stirring up your heart with affection toward that thing. All right, there's some food for thought from this chapter with eyes on eternity. We'll see you next week as we continue our adventure through the treasure principle. Take care.